Teacher calls 911 on foster parents. What happens next will shock you undefined. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Miss Bradley's classroom, casting long shadows across the empty desks. As always, Noah slipped through the door just as the bell chimed, his 14-year-old frame folding into the back corner like a shadow seeking refuge. His dark eyes never lifted from the worn linoleum beneath his feet. Miss Bradley's heart clenched as she watched him settle into his usual isolation. The boy carried himself like someone perpetually bracing for impact, shoulders hunched inward, sleeves pulled down despite the classroom's warmth. When he reached for his pencil, she caught a glimpse of what looked like finger-shaped bruises circling his thin wrist. "Noah," she had asked him one afternoon, her voice gentle as falling snow, "those marks on your arms, how did you get them?" His response was always the same. A weary shrug that seemed far too old for his young shoulders, eyes that flickered with something between fear and resignation. "I'm clumsy, Miss Bradley, always bumping into things." But Miss Bradley had been teaching for 23 years. She knew the difference between childhood accidents and something much darker. Charles and Rita Turner were the golden couple of their small community. Pillars of charity, faces beaming from church bulletins, their elegant home a testament to success and generosity. When they had opened their doors to Noah, the town had practically canonized them. Their smiles were perfect, their manners impeccable, their reputation unassailable. Yet something about their foster son's hollow-eyed silence made Miss Bradley's skin crawl. One Wednesday evening, as autumn painted the trees in shades of amber and rust, she asked Noah to remain after class. The other students filed out in their usual cacophony of laughter and shuffling backpacks, leaving behind the heavy scent of chalk dust and adolescent energy. "Noah," Miss Bradley began, settling into the desk beside him rather than looming from above, "I'm worried about you. Are you safe at home?" For a heartbeat, his carefully constructed mask slipped. His eyes, deep brown and impossibly sad, filled with unshed tears that caught the overhead fluorescent light like fragments of broken glass. But then the wall came back up, higher than before. "I'm fine," he whispered, the words scraping against his throat like sandpaper. He tried to edge away, but she caught the slight tremor in his hands, the way he flinched when she moved too quickly. The next morning brought fresh evidence. New bruises blooming purple-black along his wrists, a split lip he kept worrying with his tongue. When Miss Bradley gently touched his arm, he recoiled as if burned, his whole body going rigid with remembered pain. That afternoon, her hands shaking with righteous fury, Miss Bradley dialed, if memorizing every thread. When asked directly about the bruises, his voice emerged as barely a whisper. "I just fell. I'm always falling." The investigator left with a file marked unfounded, but the doubt lingered in her eyes like smoke. Miss Bradley refused to surrender. She began documenting everything, photographing bruises with her phone, recording the dates and locations of each mark, noting the way Noah's classmates had started whispering about the harsh words they'd overheard Charles hurling at the boy in front of the school gates. At the Turner house, the facade was crumbling behind closed doors. Charles's voice would rise to thunderous levels when he thought no one was listening, berating Noah for being ungrateful, for bringing shame on their family. Some nights, they locked him in his room without dinner, leaving him to curl up on his thin mattress with hunger gnawing at his stomach and fear wrapped around his chest like barbed wire. The breaking point came on a gray October morning when Noah limped into class, his left ankle swollen and his eyes red-rimmed from crying. Miss Bradley watched him struggle to his seat, watched him bite his lip to keep from sobbing, and something inside her snapped. She marched to the principal's office with fire in her eyes and Noah's pain fueling her determination. Armed with weeks of documentation and statements from concerned classmates, she demanded action. This time, the authorities listened. But it was a neighbor's cell phone recording that finally shattered the Turners' carefully constructed lie. The audio crackled with Charles's venomous words, calling Noah worthless, threatening him with violence if he dared speak out, the boy's broken sobs providing a heartbreaking counterpoint to the man's rage. The emergency court hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Judge Myra Hawkins had presided over her courtroom for 15 years, her steel gray hair and unwavering gaze earning her a reputation for both fairness and severity. She studied the files spread before her, photographs of bruises in various stages of healing, teacher reports, that damning audio recording, while the Turners' defense attorney painted his clients as saints forced to discipline a difficult child. Noah sat in the gallery, his small frame dwarfed by the massive wooden benches. Miss Bradley positioned herself directly behind him, a quiet guardian angel radiating support. His hands gripped the bench until his knuckles went white, Charles's threatening glare burning into him from across the aisle. When his name was called, Noah's legs felt like water as he approached the witness stand. The oath's words, truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, echoed in his ears like a prayer and a curse combined. He could feel every eye in the courtroom boring into him, but none so intensely as Charles's, those hard, cold eyes that had haunted his nightmares for months. Judge Hawkins leaned forward, her voice gentler than her reputation suggested. Noah, we want to help you, but we need to hear the truth from you. Can you do that for us? The boy's throat closed up as if invisible hands were squeezing it shut. The defense attorney hammered him with questions designed to confuse and intimidate, suggesting he was clumsy, prone to exaggeration, ungrateful for the Turners' generosity. Each word felt like a physical blow, and Noah could feel himself shrinking smaller and smaller in the witness chair. Noah, Judge Hawkins said, her tone cutting through the lawyer's verbal assault. Are you safe at home, dear? The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. Noah stared down at the worn wood of the witness box, his vision blurring with unshed tears. He could feel Charles's glare, like a physical weight, could almost hear the man's voice hissing threats in his ear. Don't you dare. Don't you dare speak. But then he thought of Miss Bradley's unwavering support, of the neighbor who had risked recording the abuse, of all the nights he had lain awake praying for someone to save him. A voice deep inside him, his own voice, perhaps for the first time in his life, whispered, You can do this. His fists clenched in his lap. His whole body trembled like a leaf in a hurricane, and then the words burst from his lips in a rush of pain and truth and desperate hope. It's not safe. The two words hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Judge Hawkins's face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks as the simple, devastating truth of it struck her. She leaned forward, her hands gripping her desk. Noah, I need you to elaborate. What do you mean when you say it's not safe? The defense attorney shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Leading the child. Judge Hawkins silenced him with a look that could have frozen fire. The entire courtroom held its breath as Noah found his voice, really found it, perhaps for the first time in his 14 years. They hurt me, he said, tears streaming down his cheeks, but his voice growing stronger with each word. They tell me I'm worthless, that nobody would ever want me. They lock me in my room without food. They say if I tell anyone, they'll make sure I never get another family again. His voice cracked, but he pressed on. I never wanted to lie. I was just so scared. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Hawkins studied Charles and Rita, her expression shifting from shock to something harder, colder. When the neighbor's recording played through the courtroom speakers, the collective flinch of everyone present was visible, the harsh words crackling through the air like physical blows, Noah's terrified sobs providing a heartbreaking soundtrack to cruelty. Thank you for speaking up, Judge Hawkins said to Noah, her voice thick with emotion. You're incredibly brave, and I promise you, this court will not fail you. The rest happened swiftly. Child Protective Services was granted immediate custody. Charles and Rita faced charges for neglect, emotional abuse, and child endangerment. Their carefully constructed reputation crumbled like sand, and with it, their freedom. As Noah was led from the courtroom, Miss Bradley's hand rested gently on his shoulder. It's over, she whispered, her own eyes bright with tears. You did it, sweetheart. You're safe now. 3 weeks later, Noah sat in a bedroom painted soothing blue, sketching in a notebook Miss Bradley had given him. The drawing showed a boy standing in sunlight, arms outstretched, finally free to breathe. When he looked up at his new foster parents, the Johnsons, whose eyes held only kindness, he managed something he hadn't felt in years: hope. And in Miss Bradley's classroom, where empty desks waited for tomorrow's lessons, his chair had moved from the back row to the center, no longer hiding in shadows, but ready to step into the light.